מה טובו עליך, אוהליך יעקב. מה טובו עליך, אוהליך יעקב. משכנתך ישראל, משכנתך, משכנתך ישראל. מה טוב עליך, אוהליך יעקב. מה טוב עליך, אוהליך יעקב. משכנותיך, משכנותיך ישראל. Please join me on page 152, 153 for the morning blessings. And rise if you can. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu che'olamim hamavir shena menai utmuma be'afapai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu che'olamim anoten nesech v'bina le'achvin ben yom uven la'ela. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu che'olamim roka haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu che'olamim pokei ha'chivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu che'olamim malbish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu che'olamim matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu che'olamim zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu che'olamim hamechin et tzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu che'olamim she'asa li kol tzorki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu che'olamim ozer Yisrael bigvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu che'olamim oter Yisrael betifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu che'olamim she'asani b'tzalmo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu che'olamim she'asani ben chorim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu che'olamim she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu che'olamim hanoten li'a'ef koach. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu. Baruch atah Adonai rofei chol basar umafli la'asot. Page 177. Baruch shema ve'aya ha'olam, Baruch hu, Baruch oseh v'reshit, Baruch shemo, Baruch omer ve'oseh, Baruch hu, Baruch gozer mekayem, Baruch shemo, Baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch hu, Baruch merachem al habriot, Baruch shemo, Baruch meshalem sacher tov l'reya, Baruch hu, Baruch mavir afela umavi ora, Baruch shemo, Baruch chai la'ad v'kayam l'netzach, Baruch hu, Baruch podeh u'matzil, Baruch hu u'baruch shemo. And just for a sampling of some of the Psalms that we recite at this point in the service to prepare us for the real praying, Turn to page 201 for Psalm 136. One sec.
Send me flower, gedovet levado, ki leolam chasto, nose hashamayim bitvuna, ki leolam L'kaharetz al ha'mayim ki le'olam chasto le'se'orim gedolim את השמש בממשלת היום כי לעולם חסתו את הירח וכוכבים בממשלת הלילה בלילה כי לעולם שבשפלנו זכר לנו כי לעולם חסדו ויפריקנו לצערנו לא יותר מכם מכובסן כי לעולם חסדו הודו להם השמיים כי השמיים לעולם חסדו כי לעולם חסדו
To finish out Pesukei de Zimra, please turn to page 231 for Psalm 150. Hallelujah. hallelujah, 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 El Bekocho, hallelujah, hallelujah, Birki Auzo. Hallelujah, 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 Vuratav, hallelujah, hallelujah, good Lord, good Lord. Hallelujah, 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 beteka shofar, hallelujah, hallelujah, benevel vechinor. Hallelujah, 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 betof umachor, hallelujah, hallelujah, beminim ve'ugav. Hallelujah, 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 b'tzil tzilei shama, hallelujah, hallelujah, b'tzil tzilei truha. Kol hanshamati hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol hanshamati hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol hanshamati hallelujah, hallelujah.
Yeah, we're going to be rising for the Baruch Hu. Jeff, we're still having some problem with sound. I'm not sure if it's distance. Maybe for later on, maybe if you can switch with Audrey, maybe if she might have a better connection, but we're having problems with your mic. But
Okay.
beautiful davening, and we're going to invite everyone to stand for the Baruch Hu on page 247.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvarech choshech, oseh shalom, uvorei et hakol.
Please turn to page 253. We're doing El Adon, and to a melody that may be familiar to a lot of you, and invite Jeff to lead on page 253, El Adon.
Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for the singing. Spring, praise for them springing fresh from the world. El Adonai Masi, Baruch Borach, B'fi kol neshama. God lo v'tuvo b'ifnei olam. Da'atutuna Limoto Hervechamo Nodim Nishmo Salaverina Zecher Malkuto Kara Lashemesh Vayizrachor Rahagehit Bin Surat Al-Bana Shevad Nodi Hamara Tiferet Ugdula Fani Chayot HaKodesh Chayot HaKodesh Chayot HaKodesh HaKodesh Mine is the sun, mine is the morn, born of the one life, even saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning. God's recreation of a new day.
Thank you, Jeff. Just imagine what it would sound like we have a better sound system. We're going to work on that before Jeff comes back. Thank you for leading, Jeff. And we'll turn over to Beth Sperber-Ritchie, who will pick up with page 275.
והביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ, ותוליכנו קוממיות לארצנו, כי אל פועל ישועות אתה, וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול, סלע באמת, להודות לך ולייחדך באהבה, ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
Let me invite people to turn to page 285 and join me in the third paragraph of the Shema, which I'll read in Hebrew. I invite you to take your talitot, wrap the tzitzit around your left forefinger. As we say the word tzitzit, we kiss them together in an act of unity of the Jewish people and our commitment to God and Jewish principles. Yomer Adonai el Moshe lemor, daber el bnei Yisrael, v'yamarta alehem, v'yasu lahem tzitzit, hakanfei b'dehem ledorotam, v'ranu al tzitzit, hakanaf petil techelet, v'haya lachem letzitzit, v'ritem oto zachartem et kol mitzvot Adonai, v'asitem otam, v'lo taturu acharei lebavchem, acharei einechem, asher atem ezonim achareihem. L'ma'an tizkaru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, item kedoshim lelohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, v'yod lachem le'Elohim, Ani Adonai Elohechem.
Adonai Elohechem Emet. We turn to page 291. Tehilot Leil Elyon Baruch Hu Umvorach Moshe uMiriam uVnei Yisrael Lecha Anu Shira B'simcha Rabba ve'amru Chulam Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai Mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh Nora tehilot Osef eleh שירה חדשה שיבחו גאולים לשמך על שפת הים יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד צור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל ופדחנו מעך יהודה וישראל גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש ישראל ברוך אתה אדוני קהל ישראל. Please join with me on page 295 for the Amidah. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu Elohei Avraham, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imot, U'mevi Geula livnei v'neihem, Leman Shmo b'Yahava. Melech Ozer uMoshia uMagen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham Vezrat Sarah Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai Rav leHoshia Mashiv Haruach uMorid Hagashem Mechalkel Chaim bechesed, Mechaye kol chai berachamim rabim, Somech noflim v'rofeh cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato, Lishenei afar, Michamocha bal gevurot, Umidom elach, Melech memit umechaye umatzmiach Yeshua. V'ne'eman ata lahachayot kol chai Baruch ata Adonai mechaye kol chai. Page 303. נקדש את שמך בעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום ככתוב על יד נביאך וכרזל זה ואמר קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוא כל הארץ כבודו. אז בקור רעש גדול, אדיר וחזק משמים קול, מתנסים לעומת שרפים, לעומתם ברוך יאמרו, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. ממקומך מלכנו תופיע ותמלוך עלינו כי מחכים אנחנו לך. מתי תמלוך בציון, בקרוב בימינו לעולם ועד תשכון. תתגדל ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לנצח נצחים. ועינינו תראנה מלכותך, כדבר האמור בשירי עוזך. ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהיך ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש. ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
I invite you to continue with the Amidah in Hebrew or English, or prayers for yourself, your heart, prayers of your heart, through page 323, and Beth will conclude that with the singing of Oseh Shalom.
יהיו לרצון אמרי פי, יהיו לרצון אמרי פי, והגיון ליבי לפניך, אדוני צורי וגואלי. יהיו לרצון אמרי פי, יהיו לרצון אמרי פי, והגיון ליבי לפניך, אדוני צורי וגואלי. עושה שלום במרומיו, עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל. עושה שלום במרומיו, עושה שלום במרומיו, יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל אמרו אמן.
I assume many of you saw the message that Dad Shalom sent out yesterday at 3 o'clock, the Shabbat message, where I offered some thoughts to introduce what I plan to talk on a little bit later this morning. And I cited a book by Mordechai Kaplan that many people don't usually read called The Faith of America, in which Kaplan really tried to create a whole liturgy for American values and principles. One example of that is in the back of our prayer book, and this is, of course, not the prayer book that Rabbi Kaplan worked on. This is the second generation Reconstructionist prayer book, but there are certain selections that actually cite the 1945 prayer book that Rabbi Kaplan, along with our beloved Ira Eisenstein and also Eugene Cohn, worked on together. First a prayer book, a Machzor, and then a whole series of prayer books after that. So if you turn on the back of the book to page 820, you notice that for the 4th of July, there's an excerpt from the Declaration of Independence, and then below that is taken from a prayer that Kaplan and company put into the 1945 prayer book. Before I read it, I just want to point out that Reconstructionism was the first American-born version of Judaism. So Reform Judaism and Orthodoxy, of course, and Conservative Judaism all were born in Europe. Reconstructionism is the first denomination or ideology of Judaism that actually, whose soil, it grew out of the soil of America. And you can't read Kaplan without, some might even argue it was almost naive, but in a very beautiful way, Kaplan believed that America was the ultimate realization of core Jewish principles put into a polity. And when he talked about living in two civilizations, the mere fact that he put American civilization counterpart and equivalent to Jewish civilization showed the level of the spiritual value that Kaplan assigned to America and what it represented. And that comes through in all of his work. And so this reading is in that spirit, and you'll get a sense of where Kaplan and Ira Eisenstein and those of the first generation of Reconstructionists, where they were coming from to understand that. I'm at the bottom of page 820. May America remain loyal to the principles of the Declaration of Independence and apply them to ever-widening areas of life. May our country be free from oppression, persecution, and unjust discrimination. May we overcome religious, racial, and class conflicts. And may we be restored as a haven of refuge for the victims of injustice and deprivation. May we learn the art of living together and come to understand how to appreciate differences, to reconcile clashing interests, to help one another achieve a harmonious and abundant life. May we acquire the wisdom to choose honest and capable leaders who will govern us by democratic and ethical principles. And may the enterprise of our American people be blessed, that we may utilize the resources of our land for the good of all the world. I don't know about you, but I can't read that without feeling some shudders up and down my spine, to imagine how prescient these words are and how far we have fallen from some of these aspirations. And that's part of what I'm going to speak about in a few minutes. Let me invite everyone to turn back to page 309 as I invite Beth to lead us in Yismachu, page 309.
ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת, שומרי שבת וקורא עונג. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג. המקדשי שבי כולם יספעו ויתענגו. המקדשי שבי כולם יספעו ויתענגו מטובך ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג. והשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו שבת. והשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג.
I'm going to invite us to turn to the Torah service now. And even though we're not taking the Torah out, we'll do the opening page of the Torah service to get into the spirit of learning Torah, sharing words of Torah. We won't do Vahi Ben Soah, but if you would please turn to page 383. We'll do that first page.
אין כמוך ואלוהים אדוני ואין כמעשיך מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך אדוני מלך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. Adonai oz lemo yitain, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom, av harachamim heitiva virtzoncha et Zion, tivneh chomot Yerushalayim, Tivneh chomot Yerushalayim, ki v'cha levad batachnu, melech elram v'nisa, Adon olamim. Pitchu li sharei tzedek, avo v'modeya. Pitchu li sharei tzedek, avo v'modeya. Zeh hashar l'Adonai, tzadikim yavohu bo. Zeh hashar l'Adonai, tzadikim yavohu bo.
So I want to encourage people kind of in their mind's eye to imagine the Sefer Torah being taken out of our ark, being brought down, and being walked through the kahal, being walked through the congregation. And there's a tradition that we participate in, most people anyway, of when the Torah comes around, people kiss it with their talit. Or if they're not wearing a talit, they might use the prayer book, because the notion is that you shouldn't put your own hand on the Torah. There's this notion of having something between you and the sacred scroll. I remember when I was writing my first book, there are a series of spiritual autobiographies that are included in the book. And one of the people is someone who came to Judaism late in life, and he talks about his experience of being first in a synagogue. And he makes a comment in the essay, which touched me so deeply. He says, there's something going on there where Jews are so involved with so much kissing in a synagogue. They kiss the Torah. If a prayer book falls down on the ground, they kiss the thing. And he just said, it gave me a sense that this is a place of love and compassion, and I wanted to be part of that. And it's funny because a lot of people say, oh, love, that's the Christian term. No. It goes very much the essence of Judaism. You know, when we talk about we love our companion, our fellow person as we love ourselves. Love is central to everything we do. And we understand that God is a manifestation of our love for ourselves, our family, and for humanity. And how we learn to live our lives is really that's what it's all about. So to this, on the metaphorical level, the idea of the Torah coming around is a question about how we come to own the Torah. And how do we come to own the values and the wisdom that it imparts to us? And as I've taught many times, but it bears repeating, that I believe that the truth of the Torah, the wisdom of the Torah, lies somewhere between the words in the scroll and the life and times of the person reading those words at any given moment. This is what differentiates liberal religion from fundamentalist religion. A fundamentalist says that the essential meaning of scripture are the words on the page. It's literalism. And progressives, of which Reconstructionism is part, say that no, there's other parts of reality. And if you take sacred texts that have been read and interpreted for generations, and we allow ourselves to see it as a living Torah, then we take our own life experience in the moment and what's happening all around us. And we say, what can we learn from the words that are designated to be read on this very morning and what we're living through right now? And that's kind of the experience that I had when I started middle of this week thinking about what I would do for a Devar Torah, and I saw we have Parashat Bo. It's the very beginning of the Exodus story, which is the master narrative of political liberation that's owned by almost all humanity, at least Western civilization. It's not just Jews. The biblical story of the enslavement of the Jewish people and their liberation from bondage out of Egypt and into the land promised by God to Abraham is the master story of political liberation in Western civilization. And I was literally trying to think about what the right to Devar Torah is on January 6th, on Thursday. And so it became very obvious to me that the wisdom of the Torah is about speaking to that issue. And it's not political, it's very deeply spiritual. So I want to share some thoughts with you, and we'll allow some time for people to respond with their own comments or questions as time will allow. We'll see how much time we have for that. But at the end of the service, I'm also going to invite people to join in breakout groups, which we've done periodically on these virtual Zoom services, and encourage that after you meet one another, you continue the conversation in smaller groups, because this is a conversation that all Americans must be having. So here it is. The events of January 6th are still being examined, investigated. The Department of Justice has launched what is turning out to be the largest investigation in its history as they pursue the people involved in the January 6th assault on the Capitol. And there is, of course, a congressional inquiry as well that is not only uncovering many new details as we speak, but there's the likelihood that in February or March, there will be prime time televised hearings, because those involved in that commission, that congressional committee, believe that this is a story that the American people must know in much fuller detail and in prime time. But with what we know a year in, I want to identify what I think are 4 factors that contributed to what we experienced a year ago, horrifically, on January 6th, 2021. 1, One factor was the xenophobia. Xenophobia, a term that means the fear of strangers or foreigners or fear of the other. White America feels itself threatened. They feel that they are the victims in the early part of the 21st century. Demographers tell us that by the year 2045, whites will be less than 50% of the youth population. Hispanics, Blacks, Asians, and multiracials are seen by white America as threats to their hegemony in America. The origins of racism in this country was rooted in keeping the other, think xenophobia, economically and politically impotent. In the case of racism, the other were Africans brought over to this country in chains to be sold into slavery. And we've created systems to ensure that more than 3 centuries into the landing of slaves on this continent, that they continue to be economically and politically impotent. And think about the phrase that was uttered at the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville in 2017. Jews will not replace us. Again, underscoring the sense that whites feel threatened that they'll be replaced by Blacks, Hispanics, Jews, and others who don't belong here, who are not native to America. 2, the appeal of autocrats. Globalization has upended the economies of the world. There's much economic dislocation as whole industries are threatened. Many people are having a harder time feeding their families, paying for health insurance, covering their monthly rent or mortgage. And it paves the way for autocrats who prey on people's fears, paint complex issues in black and white, and position themselves as saviors. And I'm not just talking about Donald Trump. It's Vladimir Putin in Russia. It's Rodrigo Duterte in the Philippines. It's Viktor Orban in Hungary. It's Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil, and more. In the early 1990s, after the fall of the Soviet Union, pundits predicted the ascendancy of democracy throughout the world. We're entering into an era of greater democratization in countries all over the world. And not 30 years later, across the world, democratic principles are under assault, and democracies, including this one, the United States, are at risk. Third factor, the assault on truth. In 2017, Tom Nichols wrote a book called The Death of Expertise. In it, he portrays how we have leveled the playing field in such a way that people with knowledge, degrees, and credentials are dismissed as out-of-touch elites. And anyone with access to a computer and a little bit of social media savvy can build an audience for alternative facts, whether it is about climate change or vaccinations or who won a presidential election. When the New York Times reviewed Nichols' book, it used the title, How Ignorance Became a Virtue. Credentialed news media gets labeled fake news. And internet platforms like Facebook make money, a lot of money, by developing algorithms that privilege posts, that polarize and perpetuate conflict between groups. It just generates more eyes on the page and more time on their platform. Donald Trump's new social media outlet is called, believe it or not, Truth. He's taken a page out of the Soviet playbook that called the state-controlled newspaper Pravda, the Russian word for truth. Almost hard to believe. Fourth factor, fixing elections. And that's meant as an intended double entendre. Fixing elections. Some say that the January 6th assault on the US Capitol was an aberration and can never happen again. But not 24 hours after this country was a hairbreadth away from overturning the election of Joe Biden as president, the bulk of the Republican Party rallied around some alternative facts about what actually happened. They voted against the certification of Biden as president. And that now is kind of conventional wisdom in Republican circles. that Biden is the fake president and Donald Trump should be the rightful person in that Oval Office. And since January 6th, a year now, in dozens of states, laws have been passed that will deny the vote to hundreds of thousands of mostly people of color that vote overwhelmingly for Democrats. That's not a coincidence. And in dozens of swing districts around the country, pro-Trump Republicans have taken over election commissions that are supposed to be nonpartisan bodies simply in place to guarantee free and fair elections, and they're in place to do something very, very different. So what is the Jewish stake in all of this? I want to number 3, around Jewish values, Jewish history, and the Jewish future. Jewish values. It would be an overstatement to claim that democracy, as it developed in England through the Magna Carta, France through the French Revolution, and America through the American Revolution, originated with the Bible. That's an overstatement. And yet the intellectual and political leaders in all 3 countries were mostly people of faith who sourced many of the values informing democratic principles in the Bible. Central principles of democracy do first appear in Jewish sources. The idea of the protection of the stranger in our midst, ahavat ger is the Hebrew term. The idea of the rule of law, the terms are din and mishpat. And a commitment to truth, emet, the Hebrew word for truth, is actually one of the names of God. So Jewish values are very much at stake with what's going on in America today and what January 6th represents. Second, Jewish history. I'm very cautious and reticent to overuse the Holocaust as a metaphor. Yet I've spoken about before Timothy Snyder's short masterpiece, that's a must-read, called On Tyranny, in which he draws numerous parallels between the rise of Donald Trump and the rise of Nazism and fascism in Europe in the 1930s. Timothy Snyder, a professor of history at Yale, wrote the book only 1 year into Trump's presidency. And since then, the dozens of parallels that he cited could be multiplied many times over. Every one of the 4 factors I've cited above, xenophobia, fixing elections, the assault on truth, the appeal of autocrats, all those were building blocks for Hitler's Nazi Germany that ended with the murder of 1/3 of the Jewish people in the world. And finally, the Jewish future. The Jewish love affair with America predates Jewish economic success here. It was rooted in a recognition that America's commitment to democracy and cultural pluralism were unprecedented in any other country on earth. And those 2 principles were a guarantee that Jews could not only survive, but could thrive in this country, even though our religious and cultural heritage was not rooted here. That was the spirit of the reading I shared with you before the Torah service on page 820 in our prayer book. And that appeared in the 1945 first Reconstruction prayer book. The confidence that Jews had in America, that it was unique, different, and allowed unprecedented ability for Jews to essentially thrive here, was built up over the course of more than 3 centuries of experience in America. And that confidence in America and what it represented has eroded in the space of just 5 years. Just in the last few weeks, in numerous social gatherings that I and Sandy have been part of, the conversation has turned to, where are you planning to move if Trump wins the presidency in 2024? It's no longer raised as a joke. It's not even raised with irony. We already know people who bought property in other countries. Now, it would be a mistake to label the issues I've addressed just now simply politics as usual, because too many people say, oh, I don't follow politics. It's always the same. This is not politics as usual. I believe this country and the democratic principles upon which it was built is facing an existential crisis. And just to break down that word, existential, maybe too fancy, it means, will democracy exist in the future. I am not confident that my children will enjoy the liberties and rights that I took for granted growing up in this country in the 1960s. And that, my friends, if that's not an existential crisis, I don't know what is. So people want to share some thoughts about this. I know people are talking about it in all kinds of settings. Under the participant icon at the bottom of your screen, there's a place where you can raise your hand electronically. The benefit of this, under reactions rather, on the far right of the bottom of your screen, you can raise your hand electronically. The benefit is that it creates a queue, an order, because there are too many screens open given how many people are participating in this morning's service. And I'd love to provide an opportunity for some number of people to share their thoughts or pose a question, because this is a conversation we must engage in a very serious way. Stu, I see you first. Go ahead. Unmute.
Well, so I guess more, I mean, very, I mean, what you said is so true and so disturbing, so well. So in the U.S., it's easy to, it's sort of easy to say that, one of the underlying the root support for anti-democratic principles is the fear of the other. But yet this is going on all over the world. So I guess it's something's even deeper going on, because it's not the same issue of the other so clearly in every nation, in all the nations of the world that have moved toward anti-democratic tendencies. So I'm curious what people think is the real underlying cause that's making this an age of anti-democratic impulses.
Thanks, Stu. Judy?
Hi, as many of you know, my mom died early.
You just muted yourself again, Judy.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry again.
As many of you know, my mom died earlier this week. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. And there's just sort of two historical precedents that make me both feel anxious and possibly optimistic. So she grew up in London during the Blitz and was one of the children who was evacuated to the countryside while Germany was bombing London. And she was actually quite nervous about Donald Trump being fascist, and that she grew up during fascism and was very concerned. She also got her US citizenship during the 1950s, and she studied very hard for her exam and was very upset that the judge, the only question he asked her was whether she was a communist. So she also has experienced xenophobia here when our country had gone crazy for many years. So it's both, she experienced the happening of fascism and also xenophobia here, but also it was overcome. But I think she might have said, it's like in Elenu, that it's up to us to actually fight this. So I think it's really good that you're raising this and making us work on it. But I think if we work on it, we can overcome it.
Judy, thanks. And we, of course, extend to you our condolences on the loss of your mom. I was very moved by the biography you posted on the listserv. What a wonderful life and what a wonderful role model. May memory be a blessing to you. Matt Wald.
Thank you. I'm having trouble conceiving of what a civil war would look like in this country. The one in the 1860s was organized at the state level. But if you think of, for example, secessionist talk in Texas, Houston would be on one side and Austin would be on another. Our part of Maryland would be on one side and Western Maryland would be on another. The divisions are not organized geographically. They might be organized to some extent racially, but it would just be hand-to-hand chaos all over. And I can't conceive of how, I conceive of how it would begin. I can't conceive of how it would end.
A sobering thought, Matt. But I'd be lying if I said it hasn't occurred to me that we have become two countries, and that, you know, Obama's famous speech to the Democratic Convention, which kind of launched him to national prominence about we're not a red America and a blue America, but one America, seems awfully naive right now. Shlomo Cohn, good to see you.
Thank you, Sid. Shabbat shalom. I hate to be, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I hate to be despairing, but I see that those who want to take this country are organized. They've taken over big parts of the judicial system where a lot of this might have to be referred to and resolved. They've taken over state legislatures, which are already passing laws and setting up procedures to restrict the vote. And I hear the other people, the other side, talking about bigger issues, but not organizing, it seems to me, in my naivete possibly, just not being organized to battle what is just very, it appears to me, systematically being put into place so that any contested election is not going to go for those people who are looking for everybody to have a vote. So I think that somehow, what I want to say is our side has to get more organized and more organized for battle. And it doesn't seem as though that's happening.
Yeah, I'll just share with you. Shlomo, I'll just say, as a way to echo your comment and maybe reinforce it, I heard one commentator a couple of days ago make mention of the fact that those, you know, on the right, you know, Trump's legions and the like, are actually doing their homework in ways that the liberals and progressives are not. And they mentioned this whole issue of taking over election boards in small counties and municipalities. Those boards were on nobody's radar screen, certainly not the people, you know, who we like to paint as the demons on the other side. But they noticed that when the elections were challenged, many of those election boards certified the actual results. And so they said, well, how do you get on those boards? Who says you have to ratify it? Maybe we could just overturn what the voters asked for. And they systematically identified hundreds of such election boards, and they've been taking them over one by one by one. So that next time this challenge is made, we won't get tripped up by little things like democratic processes and nonpartisan election boards. So yeah, one side's doing the homework and the other side writes op-eds. Martha.
So that was kind of a lead into what I'm about to say, and maybe took some wind out of my sails, making it feel a little naive, but maybe not. So I just finished reading a book for a book group called The Light of Days, which is about war resistors, this time focusing on the women, Jewish women in World War II. And God forbid we should ever have to do that level of resistance. But at the time, people, the Jews did not think that they could do anything against the Nazis. And yet, they were able to kill and delay and save a number of people. Well, here we are at sort of the beginning of the curve, or a little past the beginning of the curve. If we could just do actions a la Shlomo, you know, actions that are more organized, at this point, instead of sitting back and going, oi, 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 maybe if enough of us do that, we could turn the tide. And I don't know that I can name specific groups that are already organized, led by two stellar members of our community, one in Silver Spring and one in Chevy Chase, but that's a start. And so I'll just leave it there.
Thanks, Martha. Stan Newman.
Two things. One, when I was in year-old senior at Trinity College in Hartford, I organized a anti-McCarthy panel and discussion on radio, those times, on radio in Hartford, and they allowed me to do it, and we had a very intense discussion of anti-McCarthyism. So my two questions are: one, do you think that the American institutions that exist today would be as amenable to anti-fascism or anti-authoritarianism discussions that I was able, as a very young child, I was 19, to organize? And two, do you have any specific things that we as citizens, Adat Shalom could do a lot of things that but also I think I couldn't be more thankful for your discussion. But the question is, what two things? One is the media today, and the other one is what can we as people, not as institutions, I mean, we're all supportive of Adat Shalom, as you well know, but how can we, I mean, I feel kind of lost in a way. I don't know what to do. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Stan, thanks for raising the question. I'm not going to try and respond to it, but I would invite people who have found constructive outlets. And Martha, you know, I'm not sure why you felt hesitant to mention Doreen Pastor and Deborah Fried-Levin and the work. No, I think if people are doing things that think are constructive and can make a difference, put them in the chat box. That's why we're having this conversation, really. Deborah just got on the screen, so she'll speak for herself for sure. But there are avenues of activism. We can't sit on our hands, and it needs to be a multi-pronged effort for sure. Jorge, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. I'm sorry I cannot offer any thoughts of what we can do at this time, and I may be among those that Martha described like I. But I was just thinking of the Yiddish song that was popular after the war with the displaced people, Where Do I Go? And I am a wandering Jew. Coming this May, it's going to be 53 years that I left Argentina, its stinky dictatorship, anti-Semitism, etc. I adore this country. I've been a senior army officer, and as a veteran, it brings tears to my face, thinking of what's going on here. And yes, the question of where am I going to go has crossed my mind, and said, thank you, you have opened the dialogue besides what we should do. And I think we should not sit on our hands. Yeah, I'm completely on that. But also, it's a reality that Judaism has never faced, but it has been prevalent all over the world throughout Jewish history. And we are facing an existential crisis right now that we raise the question, where are we going to go? I'm not seeking answers to that, if it's Canada or Israel or whatever, but it's just more an opportunity to share the emotions of somebody that converted into America, becoming an American. It's extremely, extremely painful. And last but not least, a close friend of ours that passed away, that was a Holocaust survivor from the camps, before dying, warned us, look, this guy is Hitler. I saw it, and this guy is Hitler. That's all. I don't want to expand anymore. Thank you.
Yeah, Jorge, thanks for your sharing it. And, you know, the vast majority of the people on this Zoom call and in our community are American born, but your voice as someone who uprooted his own life, came to this country, speaks with an accent, reminds us that for so many of our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, the fate of Jews through history has been to have bags at the ready, that what we assumed would always exist may not always exist. And that is just a horrific thought, and I can't even believe I'm saying those words, but that's why I want to raise it in my Torah. And you are a personal testimony to someone who made that choice, fought for this country, and now again considers whether he can live out the rest of his days in the country that he loved and has adopted. So thanks for sharing that. Laura and Ethan.
Thanks, Sid, for your wonderful analysis and inspiring. And what we often look to you for is a bit of hope. So I'm wondering where the hope is, but I have a couple answers which Martha already mentioned. Two of them, which are born in Judaism and our synagogue, it's already been mentioned, Silver Spring Progressive Action and Nope Neighbors, both created by Dory and Deborah Fried-Levin, and they are amazing sources of community. You know, we know there's Jewish roots there, and where the despairing can turn into action and feel connected. And that, I just want to encourage people to, you know, check out those avenues for activism. And the second point I wanted to make is last night we watched Jamie Raskin's book talk about his new book called Unthinkable, through politics and prose. And if anybody can be despairing, it would be Jamie Raskin, who clearly had incredible trauma last year with the loss of his son and, you know, dealing with January 6th. And he is, not only did he start his career through a Dutch loan because Esther Gelman encouraged him to run for state senator. So that's our roots. And secondly, he is full of optimism, and he openly talks about fascism and the takeover in our country, but he's full of optimism and hope and activism. And I think that we have to all get his book and read it, and also understand that we can create that hope to help us move forward and fight these evil forces that you so clearly discussed in your talk.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. Look, we are so fortunate to have Jamie Raskin as a friend, neighbor, and he's quickly risen to national prominence. So he's a national figure. Not only, among the things that Jamie does that's maybe under the radar screen, so every summer he has a summer program for young people about how to make them into political activists. And so if you're looking for a place and a person who can channel your time, enthusiasm, and money, and yes, money is not a dirty word here, it's really the mother's milk of politics is money, as Deborah Fried-Levin has taught us many times over and taught me. If you have resources to expend in this effort, Jamie Raskin is a great place to go to channel that. I mean, and he's a member of Congress, so it's not just, you know, someone on the side that doesn't know what to do. Extremely effective, and we need to kind of support those forces. So that's among the places of hope that I would kind of raise up. So thanks for mentioning that, Laura. Steve.
Thanks, Sid. You know, it's easy to despair and get down and feel basically immobilized by all that's going on. And I realize that, and I get asked sometimes, often by my kids, where do you look for hope? Especially my new daughter-in-law, who's a fourth grade teacher at a inner city San Jose, California, economically disadvantaged elementary school. And during the pandemic, you know, where she had a shift to virtual teaching and all that, she was always looking for me for some words of hope. And I guess where I find it most is in, fortunately, the millennials that I have the closest contact with, my own kids and their significant others, and a few others that quote unquote help to raise through community action. And I guess that's where I see some hope, because I've been blessed that both of my kids are involved in trying to make the world a better place, and find more equitable treatment for people of poverty, and et cetera, et cetera. My daughter-in-law with her teaching commitment to education, and a good friend's daughter who is one of my daughter's best friends, who works, she's an up-and-coming star at the Democracy House or Freedom House in New York that reports on the status of democracy around the world, and is self-reflecting on what's happening in this country. So if anywhere, that boosts my spirits to see passionate young people, and not just say, well, the younger generation is not the hope that we so often look to, but I think that they very much can give us some rays of hope when, during these difficult times. Thank you for your words, Sid.
Thank you, Steve. Let me just make a comment. If I would ask that we not add any more people to the queue. Zoom guys, I don't know if there's a way to turn off the raise hand thing, but I'm just mindful of time. So Murray, could you just raise your hand? I was gonna say you'd be the last person, Murray, if you'd like to comment, and then ask no one else to join the queue, if that's okay. Okay, Louis.
Hi, thank you, Sid. I agree with us needing to take action, and I will work with Nope Neighbors as I have to continue to take action in more depth this summer. But I also feel like we have had a crisis of truth leadership. Until this Thursday, who's going to be it? Biden should take up the job. And until this Thursday, he didn't say anything. He hasn't said a thing. But if you listen to the Washington Post 3-minute synopsis of the summary of his talk, it was fantastic. It was the right thing. And I think we need someone leading and saying these truths every day, every week, all the time, because otherwise there's nothing that counters the forces of evil that are speaking consistently.
Thanks, Louis. Mark?
So I absolutely agree with all the actions that people want to take, but I think one of the greatest challenges we have is not to characterize as the other side, because it becomes the other, and if it remains the other, we'll never get to where we want to be, which is a unified country where we don't treat anybody as other. It's not unlike taking that last drop of wine out of the Pesach cup in memory of understanding of what happened when the Egyptians lost their lives. So I think that's absolutely critical, both as human beings, but also strategically, if we want to get to where we're going to want to go.
Thanks, Mark. Bill Halpern. Gotta unmute, Bill.
There are many examples of people successfully pushing back against these forces. And I think what we need to do is focus on what the key success factors were. I mean, just the latest being the election in Chile, where a progressive pushed back against an extremely right-wing candidate. You can go back through the Senate elections in Georgia and beyond, and the pressure being put on Orban by the commission in Brussels. And to me, that the key element is avoiding a fracturing of the opposition. That's what allowed, for the prime example, let's say Bolsonaro in Brazil, because the center-left fractured into a whole bunch of small groups, and through a minority, he was able to take power. And I think that's where the Republicans are pushing their effort in this country. So the key element in my mind is a consolidation, coming together of all those forces that believe in democracy and presenting a united front against this. And I think that's beginning to happen. But to me, if that doesn't happen, I agree. I despair.
Thanks, Bill. Deborah.
So the group I lead is called NOPE. Many of you have joined us in some way or another. But my job has been with that group and in general, kind of that voice of hope. So I'll try to do that yet again. I take as inspiration Jamie Raskin's father's words, when there is no hope, you be the hope. And, you know, I live in Chevy Chase, DC. You are my peoples. And, you know, despair, you know, open the New York Times, watch CNN, and you're going down that rabbit hole. I mean, you know, I don't think the New York Times or CNN does us any favors because it fans our flames of anxiety as much as anything else. So the group I lead, Sid, thank you for the shout out as far as kind of the importance of giving money. But I'm going to say something different this time out, as in money's important, but the politicians are going to have more than enough. I mean, you look at all the data, Democrats raise far more money. They raise all the money they need. There's a point beyond which it's of absolutely no use. The place where there is actually hope is in the grassroots. And what you'll see, you know, Dory will speak to this as well. I mean, I'm part of a network of volunteer activist groups. They look like us. They're so white. They're so privileged. They're all that stuff. And we are well resourced. Our group raised 2 million. Other groups like us raised 7 million. And we don't exist as groups. We were directing money to candidates, but now we're directing money to grassroots groups. Black Voters Matter in Georgia, Lucha in Arizona, Make the Road in Nevada, Block, Black leaders organizing communities in Milwaukee. It's actually happening. I mean, those are the people who are really on the front lines doing the work and seriously under-resourced and are recognized by my peers, my network of activists, as the ones who are going to make the difference. I mean, and I don't have to persuade you of the merits of that case because Stacey Abrams did that job in Georgia. We all know what that looks like. You know, we owe it to 10 years of Stacey Abrams' work and inspiration of all those grassroots in Georgia that showed up and made it happen. And it is happening all over the country. There's a great resource, Movement Voter Project, which it has the entire universe of those groups telling what's being done. But it is being done. It's people who don't look like us, because that's really what's important. People who are in those communities, who look like the people in their communities, and who are being empowered to do the local work, to do the school board work, to do all the lower level elections. Should it be happening faster? Yes. Should the party be able to do more? Wish it were so. It ain't happening. That's where it's happening. So, as far as kind of, what it looks like out in the field, there is a lot going on. You're just not going to see it on CNN or in the New York Times because they are feeding your fear keeps your eyeballs peeled. But there is a lot going on. So Warnock is speaking at our kickoff meeting on February 7th, because you will show up if Warnock shows up. But far more importantly, we're going to have grassroots leaders speaking, and we raise money. We're all about raising money for the grassroots right now, and supporting them with door knocking, whatever they need.
Deborah, bless you for all your work, really amazing work, and mentioning all those grassroots efforts on the local and state levels is really incredibly important. Dory, you were partner in crime with Deborah. Preach on.
And as always, Deborah is so wise that I hardly have anything to follow up with her, and the rest of you too. It's been a really rich conversation today. But I will say just two things. One is that it's so important, and I lead Silver Spring Progressive Action, but Deborah, I think, would say the same thing, that it's really important to be smart about this, as other people have said, that money is important, and there has been so much money thrown at candidates who, I know it makes people feel good to do that, and they just don't have a chance of success. It's really important to find groups who you trust, who know what's going on, who can funnel money to the candidates and the groups who can truly make a difference both now and in the future, instead of sending it to rock stars. Now, I don't mean Jamie by that, because Jamie is a great place to send money because he does funnel it elsewhere. His reelection chances are safe, of course. And the second one is to do something. It feels overwhelming, I know, and it doesn't take a lot just to, pick up the phone or write a check or knock on a door. It just do something. And I'll just add one more thing, and I hope I can say this, but Maryland is not blame free here. We also have a representative to Congress who is very Trumpy and who brought a gun to the Capitol in the same month as the insurrection. And he is also up for re-election or not this fall. Maryland's own gerrymandering is kind of helping the other side out a little bit. Silver Spring Progressive Action is having a voter registration drive for the Eastern Shore later this month, and we'll continue that for several months, I think. So if you'd like to join NOPE. It's all good. All the groups are doing good work, but do something and be focused. Thanks.
Dory, thank you. But please do mention the name of the member of Congress who you identified.
Andy Harris, he represents District 1, Maryland District 1 on the Eastern Shore.
Thank you. Okay. Barry, you're last.
Okay, thank you. The retreat from democracy in the United States will continue because of one of the flaws in the United States Constitution. And this flaw emanates because the founders did not see people as equals. And this particular flaw is where you have two senators from each state, regardless of the size of the state. And today we have a state with two senators and another state with two senators. That other state has more than 40 times the population of the other. So it brings a situation in which we have a minority of this country controlling the majority. Another flaw is in the election system, in which we have a minority of the people who voted for somebody actually having that person as their president. The majority of the country will vote one way, but the minority can have their president. So this flaw will continue. And I think, again, this is the retreat from democracy. And I'm really sorry to say, I don't see any way that this is going to improve. When I was in law school and we studied constitutional law, it was as if the Constitution was Torah Sinai. That was it. But we have to see that the Constitution is flawed. And I don't see a way, because the way the Constitution is written, to make changes which will bring us back towards democracy. I'm sorry for giving this doomsday kind of notion, but that's the way I see it.
Thanks, Barry. Thank you all for participating. I know that multiplying the words of people who shared their thoughts on screen, there have been a lot of things in the chat box which are rich, and I hope people take the time to save the chat box. I haven't even read it, but I've been focusing on the comments, so you have a chance to read it later. So I take up the charge from Laura. I don't want to leave people in a place of despair. I want to share with two thoughts. Number one is what I mentioned in my newsletter message, Faith of America. I have something in the back of my mind which I kind of want to flesh out. It's kind of almost incredible to imagine that it took until the second decade of the 21st century for books to come out about the origins of slavery and racism in America. Not unlike the fact that it took almost 40 years before you had a robust literature about the Holocaust. It takes some time for trauma to sit in and historical trends to be understood, and for critical scholarship to kind of start weighing in, and with knowledge and investigation you raise consciousness and kind of can start changing the direction of a country. It's worth remembering that when Kaplan talks about the faith of America, I'm imagining that we need to make some kind of commemoration day out of January 6th, so that we start teaching about it and have a liturgy about it, and year after year talk about that democracy is not with us forever if we don't safeguard it in ways that we imagine might never have been necessary. So that's kind of a public education program, and there is a place for houses of worship, faith communities to kind of be part of that effort. And in tandem with that, let me remind everyone that the civil rights movement was mobilized heavily in faith communities. We as a community of Amidah Shalom are an amazing conglomeration of intelligence and well-connected people and resources, which has tremendous ability for collective action. We can do a lot together, and we're only one congregation. I raised up the work of William Barber, Reverend William Barber out of North Carolina, has done amazing work putting religious language behind what has been happening in America, not just the last 4 or 5 years. He's been at it for several decades, starting with Moral Mondays in North Carolina, going back a couple of decades. So there is action to be had. We have a lot of examples in our own community of people who've mobilized tremendously effectively for different issues that can be mentioned, whether it's about marriage equality or about the environment. We can and need to be part of this effort. And we have some of the leaders of the effort right with us right this morning. So we're not giving up. I'm not moving anywhere. I raised it just to kind of show this level of urgency that we need to have. And I think our commitment to this country has got to be redoubled if we want to ensure that the values and principles that we've articulated about America will be with us, not just for our generation, but for our children and our children's children as well. Wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom, and with that, we'll call up 3 aliyot to read from Parshat Bo, the beginning of the story of the Jewish people's enslavement and exodus from Egypt. I believe that David Silverman has the first aliyah, and somewhere about 17 miles up the 17 miles up the chat is his Hebrew name. And we'll be reading.
Sid, I'm going to have to interrupt. I just put in the message that 2 people left. So Randy Steiner is first. If 2 other people could volunteer, that would be great.
Okay, so privately chat, Martha, if you want an aliyah, so we'll call up. So who's the first aliyah now?
Randy Steiner, Rivka, Bat, Elena, Vimosha.
Great, thank you. And Gil Rosen is reading from Exodus chapter 12, verse 29. In the old plow, it's on page 461, and the new plow, page 413. Randy, the aliyah is for you.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvoto v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayhi b'chatzi halayla Adonai kacho b'chor be'eretz Mitzrayim b'chor paro hayeshev al kiso ad b'chor hashvi asher b'beit havor b'chor behema vayakam paro layla hu v'chol avadav b'chol Mitzrayim v'tihi tza'aka gedola b'Mitzrayim ki ein bayit asher ein sham meit vayikra l'Moshe u'l'Aharon layla Vayomer humutzu mitoch ami gam etchem gam b'nei Israel ulechu ivdu et Adonai ki gaderberchem gam tzomchem gam bekarchem kilchu kasher dibartem v'lechu v'rachtem gam oti.
Um, yeah,
Second bracha, Randy.
yeah, I just put it up.
Randy, you can read it on the screen, Randy, if you look at the screen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, kiddushanu b'tzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'rivdei Torah.
Okay, now you're now the second bracha below that now.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ha'amelamed Torah la'amo Yisrael.
Amen. Amen. Yamod Sheni. Second aliyah is?
Orit, Bat, Edna, Vedan, and we need one more.
Okay, Ari, so we're reading now verse 33, and John Niles will be chanting for us after Ari does the brachot.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לעסוק בדברי תורה.
Amen.
Amen. ותקזק מצרים העם למהר לשלחך מן הארץ כי אמרו כולנו מתים. וישא העם את בצקו טרם יחמץ משערותם צרורות ושמלותם על שכמם. ובני ישראל עשו כדבר משה, וישאלו ממצרים כלי כסף וכלי זהב ושמלות, ואדוני נתן את חן העם בעיני מצרים, וישילום, וינצלו את מצרים.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהי, ברוך אתה אדוני המלמד תורה לעמו ישראל.
Amen. And now invite people who would like to have a Misha Baruch said for themselves, a prayer of healing said for themselves, or for a loved one to put those names in the chat box. And we'll take a moment to kind of reflect on who in our community needs healing, and so we can add our prayers to their names. Actually, Martha, can you keep the chat box open, Martha, so we can see those names before you share the screen? Thank you.
We've seen the names coming into the chat. I also just, well, after this Devar, feel like we need to say a prayer of healing for all those who are feeling despair. Mishabera Avoteinu Vimotenu Uyevarech et HaCholim Uyevarech et HaCholot Vayanik Lahem Orech Ruach Ometz Lev Urafua Shlema Mishaberach Avoteinu Vimotenu Yevarech et HaCholim Uyevarech et HaCholot Vayanik Lahem Orech Ruach Ometz Lev Urafua Shlema. May the one who blessed all those who came before give patience and courage to us now. Help us find the strength to nurture and to bring a full healing. Amen. יברך את החולות ויעניק להם אורך רוח אומץ לב ורפואה שלמה. אמן. רפואה שלמה.
Beautiful, Beth, and not only the words, but your invocation of extending the prayer to all of us who are sick at heart of what we're facing and summoning the courage to do what we have to do. Thank you for that prayer, for that bracha. Thank you. We'll invite the third aliyah, who will be, Martha?
Shlomo, and please give us your Hebrew name.
Shlomo ben Chana Ugdalia HaKohen.
Okay, and the third aliyah is the maftir section, Exodus chapter 13, verse 14 through 16, being read by Kayla Niles. You can find it in the old Cloud on page 470, and the new Cloud on page 416. Shlomo, offer the bracha, please.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen. Kayla?
Sorry, I did unmute. Came back. Okay.
Sounded great. Let's do it again.
All right, take it from the top. ישלחה בנך מחר לאמור מזות יראתה אליו יחזק יד הוציאנו אדוני ממצרים מבית עבדים ויהי ישכב פרעה ושלחנו ויהרוג אדוני כל בכור בארץ מצרים מבכור אדם ויד בכור בהמה על כן אני זובח לאדוני כל פטר רחם הזכרים וכל בכור בני אפתה והיה לאות על ידך ולטוטפות בין עיניך כי בחוזק יד הוציאנו אדוני ממצרים.
Baruch atah Adonai hamelamed Torah la'amo Yisrael.
Amen. Big appreciation to Gil Rosen, John Niles, Kayla Niles for being our laners, our Torah readers this morning. Thank you so much. Before we do the concluding song for the Torah service, I want to direct your attention to page 418 in the prayer book, which I'd like to read at this moment before we close the Torah service. Prayer for our country. Ribon ha'olam, kabel na brachamim et tfilatenu. Sovereign of the universe, mercifully receive our prayer for our land and its government. Let your blessings pour out on this land and on all officials of this country who are occupied in good faith with the public needs. Instruct them from your Torah's laws, enable them to understand your principles of justice, so that peace and tranquility, happiness and freedom may never turn away from our land. Please, wise one, God of the life breath of all flesh, waken your spirit within all inhabitants of our land and plant among the peoples of different nationalities and faiths who dwell here love and brotherhood, peace and friendship. Uproot from their hearts all hatred and enmity, all jealousy and vying for supremacy. Fulfill the yearning of all the people of our country to speak proudly in its honor. Fulfill their desire to see it become a light to all nations. Therefore, it may be your will that our land should be a blessing to all inhabitants of the globe. Cause to dwell among all peoples, friendship and freedom. And soon fulfill the vision of your prophet, Lo yisa goy al goy chareb, lo yamadu od milchama. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation. Let them learn no longer the ways of war. And let us say, Amen. Before we do the final prayer, Eitz Chaim on page 441, let me just anticipate the questions. I will be posting after Shabbat a written version of the Devar Torah that I gave this morning on the additional listserv, so it'll be available to you there. Okay, page 441.
Eitz Chaim hi lemachazikim ba v'tomcheha meushar deracheha darchei noam v'chol netivotecha Shalom, Hashivenu Adonai, Elecha v'nashuva, Chadesh yameinu kekedem.
We're going to invite Jeff Weintraub to come back on screen. I know he's frustrated. They had a little technical problems this morning, which got in the way of his beautiful davening. It was still a beautiful davening, but we didn't hear it quite as well. I think he's now going to be using Audrey's computer in the same house. But Jeff and I have been having a lot of fun over the past year plus, finding contemporary songs that have analogs in our liturgy, trying to kind of update our service and keeping it alive and a little bit different. So this morning he's going to be doing a version, and give Jeff full credit for modifying a Van Morrison song, which is when God shines his light on us. And he'll do a version of that, and you'll see the words in a second. So Jeff, welcome back, and let's do it.
Thanks, and sorry for the technical difficulties with the sound. And can you hear me okay here? Does this sound all right? I mean, I know this isn't at the highest sound fidelity, but just to put it in perspective, I think it's way better than the Zoom services my grandparents used to have at their shul in Lithuania about 100 years ago. So, you know, we'll take what we can get. This is a song that Van Morrison did as a duet with, and I forgot the name, another, I think, Irish or British singer in 1989, and it goes like this. Whenever God shines a light on me, opens up my eyes so I can see. When I look up in the darkest hour, I know everything's gonna be all right. In deep confusion, in deep great despair, when I reach out, God is there. When I am lonely, as I can be, I know that God shines a light on me. Reach out for God, and God will be there. We got your troubles, you can share. If you live the life you love, get the blessing from above. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha ken yehi ratzon ya'er panav elecha v'yechuneka ken yehi ratzon ken yehi ratzon Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yaseh lecha shalom ken yehi Ratzon Ken Yehi Ratzon. Reach out for God, God will be there. Your troubles, God will share. If you live the life you love, you get the blessing from above. May God bless and protect you. May it be God's will. May God's face shine a light and give favor. May it be God's will. May God's face be lifted to you and give you shalom. May it be God's will. May it be God's will. God will lift you up and turn you around and put your feet back on higher ground. Whenever God shines a light on me, opens up my eyes so I can see. When I look out in the darkest night, I know everything's gonna be alright. Can you hear that song? Can you hear that song?
Thank you, Jeff. Fabulous. Thanks so much for doing that. Beautiful, beautiful. You see the reactions. All right, we'll invite people to rise, invite Beth back to the Bima, the virtual Bima, as we offer Aleinu, page 445.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שנתן לנו תורת אמת, וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגבי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד, על כן נקווה לך אדוני. כי המלכות שלך היא ולעולמי עד, תמלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
May be seated if you're still standing. We come now to a moment when we remember those who have recently departed, passed away of late, and also those who are marking an anniversary of the death of a loved one. We extend our condolences to Matt Wald on the death of his mother, Edith Wald, to Lisa Lansman on the death of her mother, Rhoda Lee, to Andrew Benkin on the death of her father, Jack Crandell, to Ellen Schiller, who's the sister of Wilma. I don't have the last name, I'm sorry. And our condolences to Judy Greenwald on the death of her mother, Regina Greenwald. We also mark the following yard sites: Helen Roth, the grandmother of Deborah Basilis; Renee McDowell, the mother of Nelson McDowell; Israel Levy, the father of Brian and Michael Levy; Mayor Cantor, the father of Doreen Cantor Pastor; Ira Lerner, the cousin of Marcia Teichman; Gladys Lipton, the mother of Judy Ackerman; Lila Blaine, the mother of Jamie Kaplan; Sarah Berkowitz, the mother of Audrey Rhodes; Emma Rolfe, the grandmother of Barry Fierst; Patricia Macklin, the mother of Jackie Glass; Elizabeth Jelka, the mother of Daniela Wolf; Suzanne Holzer, the mother of Harry Holzer; Stan Edelson, the father of Naomi Edelson; Samuel Plotkin, the father of Henry Plotkin; Sally Rubenstein, the father of Sandy Rubenstein; Alex Malakin, the father of Bruce Malakin; Ursula Stanton, the mother of Thomas Stanton; Pauline Schmuckler, we remember, friend of all of us and of Rosalie Gross; Milton Cogan, the father of Alan Cogan; Florence Kane, the aunt of Stephen Isaacson; Matthew Gottlieb, the brother of Michael Gottlieb; Gertrude Polster, the mother of Judith Zauderer; Miriam Lewin, the mother of Malkuth Kudnick and Deborah Lewin; Melanie Engel, mother of Jeffrey Egnell; Rosalie Beloff, the mother of Jane Feldman; Miles Brager, the father of Lynn Tagg; Irving Warren, the father of Anne Larry Wong; Harry Axe, the father of Alyssa Axe Schrabstein; and Liberty Morrison, the mother of Catherine Morrison. For all those saying Kaddish, we invite you to stand for the morning's Kaddish on page 451. Yit Gadal, Yit Kadash, Shemei Rabbah, B'yamad Yirach Chirutei, B'yomich Malchutei, B'chayechon B'yomechon B'chayedu Chol Beit Yisrael, B'galav V'zman Kariv Yimru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevarach, Yilam Umel Maya. Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Yitbar, Yitramam Yitnaseh. Yitadar, Yitalev, Yitalal, Shemei Dukudasha, Brichu. Leila min kol berchata b'shirata, tushbechata b'nechamata, Tamiran b'yamav yimru Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al Yisrael yimru Amen. Aseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al Yisrael, v'al yoshvei tevel yimru Amen. We're going to have a few announcements for the congregation from Carol Bloomberg, and just before she comes on screen and unmutes, let me just appreciate everyone who's here today. As many of you know, the plan was for us to do the baby naming of our new grandson, Avi Jesse Schwartz, and we had hoped to do it at Adat Shalom, and then with the Omicron phenomenon, we went virtual a few weeks ago, and then the complexity of even gathering family in the sanctuary became overwhelming. We decided it was the better part of wisdom to postpone it. So I hope you'll be with us, and hopefully we'll be in the sanctuary on March 19th when we reschedule that. And I hope, let's hope that we can bear out this.
I'm unmuted.
Oh, Sid's muted. Oh, no.
Did all that go on mute?
Yes.
Well, I just delivered another brilliant talk, but it was short. It was only a minute long.
We got the March 19th in the sanctuary.
How did that come through?
We'll try it once more with feeling.
Anyway, I just wanted to say that initially we had planned this morning to do the baby naming of our grandson, Avi Jesse Schwartz. We decided to postpone to March 19th. And none of us had thought we would once again be in virtual space, but it just seemed a better part of wisdom for us to go virtual. But the community we formed this morning, thank you all for being here, and thank everyone for participating and making it possible, especially to Shulamit and Martha, who are Zoom guys. We need volunteers to make these things work, so thank you so much. Carol, a few announcements, please.
Okay, Shabbat Shalom to everyone. Good to see so many of you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I hope you're staying warm and well. I want to add to the chorus of thank yous, Sid, for your incredibly relevant and thought-provoking devar, and also for offering the opportunity for a robust follow-up discussion. I really appreciated the sense of community and hope that's been difficult to attain during that pandemic. Stu Simon wanted us to mention that the Climate Action Team is having a third annual climate legislation briefing tomorrow on Zoom from 5 to 6 p.m. Delegates Corman and Charkoudian, who are both climate leaders, will be speaking and will be available for questions. Stu did put the registration link in the chat, so you can find it there. Tomorrow, Kevin Teichman is offering a good to know at 4 p.m. on how to put on tefillin. And in the next few weeks, there are going to be more fascinating good to know programs. So please join us. For families, there's going to be a Tu B'Shvat Seder, Saturday the 15th at 10 a.m. And watch Social Solidarity for registration information. Finally, thank everybody for their support on the smooth transition of the listserv and Social Solidarity to new platforms. Please keep reading Social Solidarity to stay up to date on all the happenings. And Rena wanted me to mention that it is a work in progress and we're learning how to make it better. So thank you all and looking forward to seeing you in person, hopefully in the not too distant future.
All right, thank you so much, Carol. I actually did, Stu Simon, who's been doing amazing work on the Environment Task Force, did ask to say a couple words just about tomorrow's event. It's a remarkable event. So Stu, you want to just add to what Carol's announced?
Sure, just very quickly. So this is the third time we're doing it. For anybody who's been at the other 2 times we did it the last 2 years, you'll find it's your best chance probably ever to have a good dialogue going with some of the leading climate champions in the state assembly, both the assembly and the state senate. You may wonder, what is it worthwhile doing? They need to hear that people, fervently, that it's one of the main issues for people, because sometimes these folks feel alone, that nobody's listening to them. So they need to hear our voices to reinforce what our concerns are. If you have kids, it would be great if you could invite them to attend, because they often ask, is it only people over 65 who are interested in this? What about the kids who it's really going to affect? And when they do hear from kids, that they love to hear that, and they'll quote it to their colleagues. So if you have kids who have any interest at all in this, bring them, have them, come speak. And let's see, and so what can Maryland do? Maybe your question, and the answer is that this is a progressive thing. So when one state, one county, big county shows they can do X, then another county does it. When one state shows they can do Y, then other states do it. So we're kind of in this healthy competition, but we're not competing fast enough, strong enough. So it'd be great if Maryland can leap out in front again, which we are falling behind, and show that, yes, we can move to a green electricity, a green power economy. And if we can show it, then other states take heart that they can do it too. And we need to do it fast, because that's the other even bigger existential crisis facing humanity. So
great,
please
thank you.
If you have any questions, call me.
Yeah, thanks for your work on this, Stu, so much, and I hope people can join tomorrow. I just want to make a request of Martha or Shalami. I don't seem to have the ability to do it. If someone could save the chat, I've not had a chance to keep up with it, and send it to me on email, that'd be great. I'd appreciate that. We will in a moment close the service, but let me just say a word about the breakouts. We did plan for about a 30-minute breakout after the service. We're doing groups of 5. I know not everyone always stays for it, so it might be a group of 4. But this is an opportunity to, number one, meet some people you might know well, others you may not know at all. So take the chance when you're in a breakout room to introduce yourself to one another. And then it's an opportunity to kind of continue the conversation in smaller groups that we opened up with the Devar Torah and the very robust conversation today. The breakout rooms will be open for 30 minutes, and hope people will participate. It's one of the ways that we can continue to build and strengthen our community, even in the face of COVID and our need to isolate to stay safe and healthy. So that'll happen right after the end of the service. We'll invite Beth now to come back and say the Kiddush and a closing Ma'aseh Hayom song, which hopefully you can sing to, even though you're going to be muted. Doesn't sound very good when we all unmute. And then hopefully you stay around for the breakout groups and that conversation. Beth?
We're on page 465. Vishameru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, l'dorotam berit olam, beini uvein v'nei Yisrael, od hi le'olam, ki sheishet yamim asa Adonai, et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, uvayom hashvi shavat vayinafash. Al kein berach Adonai et yom hashabat v'yikadshehu, savrei chaverai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Ma yafeh hayom, Shabbat shalom. Ma yafeh hayom, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, everyone. See you in a breakout room. See you next week. Shabbat shalom.
Breakout room to discuss the Devar.
No.
Hello.
Come on.
What's this?